I don't think we're there yet. I think that we still have problems with our military capability and capacity. We just saw this accident that happened out there in Japan with the destroyer that hit the merchant ship. We don't know all the issues with it, but I know that we've seen an incredible increase in aviation mishaps over the past years because we don't have the money and the resources for them to get the proper type of training. The fact that we have aviation maintenance crews going to boneyards and museums to try to find spare parts. We have a military ground force that's being run into the ground with 6 and 7 combat tours of duty. That not only affects the soldier, it also affects the family. And so you've seen divorce rates increase. And of course, I wear this ring, the hashtag 22 kill ring, which signifies the fact that on average 22 veterans a day are taking their own lives because of the stress, and that should not be happening in our country. So I think that there is a lot of quantitative and qualitative things that we can do to improve our state of readiness. And when I look at the world today, when I was commissioned in the military, it was the Soviet Union and us. But now you not only have Russia, you have China, you have Iran, you have North Korea, and then you have the proliferation of Islamic jihadist groups that go from Boko Haram in Nigeria all the way over to the Philippines with Abu Sayyaf. And we just know that in the island of Mindanao, we just had an ISIS-related variant of Abu Sayyaf that just attacked a Christian school there. I believe that we're putting more pressure on, it's first and foremost ISIS, but I don't want to see us fall into the trap of just focusing on this group or that group. This is a global jihadist movement. And I have said this before on national TV interviews. I think it's very important for the president to deliver a national security address that talks about his vision, that talks about his strategy, talks about how he's going to contend with state and non-state belligerent actors that are out there, because this is a very challenging security environment in which we find ourselves. I was stationed on the Korean Peninsula back in 1995. Kim Jong-il was a little bit of a tolerant version, but Kim Jong-un is a psychopath and a sociopath. And this was a state-sponsored murder of an American citizen, and this cannot go without any type of response. First and foremost, we got to do something with China. China is not taking the right actions against North Korea. We need to put the currency manipulation status back on the table. We need to look at the means by which we can put more regional pressure on China. That means working with other neighbors, to include Korea, to include Japan, to include maybe even Vietnam, to put that economic pressure on them. We need to tighten up with sanctions on North Korea. I think we should expel every single North Korean diplomat that we have here in the United States of America. But coming back to your previous question, you got to have a credible military deterrent threat that will make people think about doing these type of things, and I think that needs to be on the table as well. Well, I find it really hard that people get upset about predicting the weather 100 years from now, but yet when they're faced with an Islamic terrorist enemy in the UK, in France, in Brussels, we just saw, they don't get the same type of righteous indignation. So I would like to see more of an alliance against the clear and present danger and threat that we see today. The Paris Climate Change Accord, first of all, was not a treaty. It was something that was non-binding. This was just a huge wealth transfer out of the United States of America. Two of your largest, polluters, if you or contributors of greenhouse emissions, is China and India. China does not have to do anything for 10 or 15 years. In India, all of their actions are contingent upon, funds and resources that they receive. So we're talking about trillions of dollars of capital that will end up leaving the United States of America, putting more pressure on our taxpayers when we need to be growing our economy. And furthermore, if you go back and look, we've done pretty well reducing our greenhouse gas emissions without any of the Kyoto agreements or this Paris climate change agreement. So let us just continue to do what we're doing because of our own innovation and ingenuity and our industry. What we heard for 8 years in the Obama administration is about the mess he inherited. Let's think about the mess that President Trump is inheriting. The Obama administration went from $10.67 trillion in debt, and now we're close to $20 trillion in debt. You look at the anemic GDP growth that we have, muddling along 1% to 2%. We need to be kicking around 3% to 4% in GDP growth. So we need the economic growth that is necessary to get Americans back to work. When we look at our energy capacity and capability, we should not be squashing it. We need to be looking at ways that we can produce, develop, export, and grow our energy industry. Because if one thing, that's one of the key things that comes back to your national security. We need to try to undermine the ability of Russia and their energy production and their energy export, especially to Europe. We need to be supplanting that, and that will help his economy to tank, and that will, bring about an ability that we don't have to worry about them being involved in Libya or being involved in the Baltic states or being involved in the Ukraine. And I do think that we have to get back to rebuilding our military capability capacity and also our regard as far as foreign policy and as a leader in the world. You talked about the Paris Climate Change Agreement. I don't think that we're retreating from the world. I don't think that we're withdrawing from the world. I think that we're doing something that is smart for the United States of America, not being a part of that climate change accord because of the wealth transfer when we have such an anemic economy right now. Well, there are two different things you need to look at. It's always interesting when people come up to me and they say that I'm a liberal, and I tell them I am too. I'm a classical liberal. I'm along the lines of John Locke, and if you've never, read, the Second Treatise of Government, I believe in the individual rights and freedoms. And I think that it's very important when you study the foundational documents of the United States of America, being the Declaration of the Federalist Papers and the Constitution. It's about limited government. The Constitution is a restraining document on the federal government. It's about fiscal responsibility. It's about individual sovereignty. It's about a free marketplace of ideas and a free market economy. And it's about a strong national defense. And I think those are the fundamental things that we have to get back to. It's just the same as when you build a house. You got to have a good solid foundation before you try to put that house up. But I think what we have seen in the last 8 years or so are these principles and values, as someone once said in Minnesota in 2008, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. I'm sure that if someone said they're about to fundamentally transform Big Ten football, someone would ask a question about that. But we didn't ask a question about it then. And so now we're moving toward a system of governance that is more so talking about wealth redistribution, a system of governance that is talking about nationalizing production, creating and expanding a welfare nanny state and a dependency society, social egalitarianism, and more of a secular humanist state. I don't want to see the United States of America go down the path of Venezuela, and that's not working out so well. And I find it very interesting that you don't hear Oliver Stone or Sean Penn or Harold Belafonte or any of these other people that ran down there and talked about how great Hugo Chavez is. They're not talking about how great Venezuela is right now. Well, first of all, you should give a president a chance to succeed. I find it very interesting with the judicial activism that is blocking the temporary travel halt, where these are countries that came from the Obama administration. And these countries that are listed in this temporary travel halt are countries that are either state-sponsored of Islamic terrorism, they are failed states, or they're states that have terrorist sanctuaries in it. So I think that we need to allow someone to have the opportunity to get their policies in place. And just think about this, it was just a 90-day temporary travel halt. It would have been over by now, so I don't understand the ruckus about it. But I think one of the most important things that the Trump administration can do, and I've said this before, you can't do policy in 140 characters. You have to do policy by working with the Congress to get your policy vision that is out there. Furthermore, when I look at some of the problems they're having with leaks and issues within the administration, it's very important that you get people in the key positions. You can go to a website, Partnership in Public Service, and it will show you where there is a real big concern about the number of positions, Senate confirmed positions. A lot of them haven't even been nominated that are still open. Or you have individuals from the previous Obama administration that are making policy decisions in the Trump administration. So I think that that's causing a big problem. Well, I think the most important thing is, with all of this going on, we just had the special elections. I'm going to give a little analysis because I was born and raised in Atlanta, so I know that area very well. And I also want to talk about, our policy agenda going forward. I want to talk about our national security. I want to talk about economic recovery, tax reform, things of this nature. And then the other thing is I just want to open up for question and answer because I think too often people come, they have prepared speeches and whatever, and they talk at people, they don't talk with people. So I'd like to know whether on the minds of the people up here in Emmett County. And let's have that great open discussion, hopefully. Well, I will tell you, being a master scuba diver, being a distance runner, and being a motorcyclist, I like the environment. I think that we need to take care of the resources that we have, but I think we also need to be prudent and spend wisely the resources that the American taxpayer sends to government, being it local, city, county commission, to the state, and definitely to the federal government. I will tell you that the thing that I want to see happen in the federal government is that no matter if you have tax reform, you got to have spending and budget reform. And I don't agree with the border adjustment tax. I think the most important thing that has to happen is Washington, D.C. needs to go back to understand what their essential functions are. And when we continue to believe that every problem has to go to Washington, D.C., and they have to solve it, that means more resources have to go to Washington, D.C. in order to solve it. The system of federalism is really what this country is based upon, which is really the states being able to do more for their citizens. And as the saying goes, all politics are local. So if we're going to talk about tax reform, we need to do this with budget reform. Right now, the Washington, D.C. has what's called a baseline budget system, which means that every year there's an increase on the spending of Washington, D.C. When politicians come back and saying that they're cutting spending, that's a false statement. They're cutting the rate of the increase, not cutting spending. So we need to do in Washington, D.C. what you do in your household, which is called zero-based budgeting, which means that you have to make sure that your expenditures equal your revenues that are coming in. So that way we don't damage your future. Just the same as I have two daughters, 24 and 20. I do not want to see them in a country where the debt is so massive, where we continue down the path of deficit spending. We have got to solve these things, and that means the people in Washington, D.C. have to have a priority. If everything, this is what the military teaches you. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. I think the most important thing is that we need to be able to sit down and have a legitimate debate and civil discourse on issues. And we need to understand that just because we disagree does not mean that we have to dislike and we have to hate. I was very concerned with the comments of MSNBC commentator Joy Reid this past Sunday, where she actually tried to justify the shooting of Steve Scalise, someone that I know personally, based upon his voting record. That cannot be how we are in the United States of America. I go and speak on a lot of college campuses. We cannot have college campuses that want to shut down any type of opposing thoughts, perspectives, viewpoints, or insights because they don't want to hear it. There's no such thing as a safe space in life. And so we cannot coddle people. We cannot coddle ourselves to believe that one side has all the answers. We don't need to say that this issue or this policy solutions means that you're going to kill the earth, kill people, what have you. We need to be open. We need to understand. That's the greatness of this country. And as we go into our 241st Independence Day celebration, I think that we as a nation need to go back and reanalyze ourselves and understand what were the founding principles and values of this great nation. What does it mean to live in a constitutional republic? We don't talk about it a lot. And I will tell you that I challenge people. On July the 4th, everyone should read the entire Declaration of Independence. Because if you understand those words, then you understand what it means to be an American.